West Tigers podcast, episode number 318. Unfortunately, not a post-victory edition of the podcast. The Tigers going down 24 points to 12 against the Dragons. And we'll start off, as per the tradition, with some one-word contributions before we get the one word being given to us by Eddie, Gary and Declan. Tiger Ton. On the West Tigers podcast forum, I'm not going to say it, but it was Tiger Ton's one word was SH something house, which I think is pretty apt. We could probably just leave it there, maybe. Tiger Lily, frustrated. Dirty Reds, sideways. And another point that Dirty Reds made was not creating any pressure in that game against the Dragons. Easty Magpie, half-paced. Avo, his one word was Bud. I'm presuming we're talking Bud Sullivan. Logan R21, the word from Logan R21 was poop, which is probably pretty good too. The last Ronan throwback, i.e. throwback to the last few years. And Peter A, back to the future. I'm going to start with Declan because Declan's in holiday mode. And Declan didn't attend the game today, but he did watch the game. And I hope your little getaway hasn't been destroyed, Declan. But what's your one word?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a getaway because I'm dog sitting, 2 dogs and 2 cats. So, yeah, it's not really much of a holiday. But, yeah, so unfortunately the game itself didn't give me much relaxation or joy on this little getaway. But I think I'm going to take from Steve's book and say, I'm going to use 2 words. I think it was step backwards this game, because all the kind of good habits that we showed against the Sharks and against the Eels, not giving away easy penalties, like really making good tackles, stopping offloads, all that kind of went away this game, and it just felt like it was a real step backwards in terms of our commitment to those 1%ers that win you games, particularly in defence. I thought it was really bad today.
Setback, okay. What about you, Eddie? What have you got for us?
Hello, Joel. I just went with reality because, I got the feeling early in that game we were in trouble in the first 5 minutes, and I know it's still relatively early in the competition, but the last 2 weeks, we showed with a couple out today that we're still a bottom 4 side in the NRL.
It was a reality program, and I don't like reality programs. Gary, what about you?
Mine's pretty much the same as Declan's, but I am going to get it into one word instead of a couple of words, and just regression. I think it was as Declan said, it was a step back, and it was back to what we've seen before, and that's the most disappointing part for me, is that it felt like we had taken a couple of steps forward with this football team the way they were playing a couple of weeks ago, and what we saw today was a couple of steps back to what we were seeing last season and the season before, and that's a little hard to take today.
I've got a few words. I've got 5 one words written down here. Firstly, I just want to say Campbelltown, because I think the people of MacArthur deserve a call out for getting out and supporting the club, as per like what we said on the pod last week. You know, if you want the West Tigers in Campbelltown, come and support the team, and they did, to their credit, which was really, really good to see. I think we need to have a little bit of a talk about the organisation of the crowd and the gates and things like that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Other words that I've got: execution, i.e. execution was poor. Physicality, something else that we'll talk about on this podcast is just the body shape of the West Tigers players as compared to the Dragons. The Dragons, even Jacob Little, monster, he's packed on some muscle. He looks significantly different to how he did when he was with us. It may not necessarily be to the benefit of his running game, which he's always been good darting out of dummy half, but they are a very big, very physical team, which is a team that we struggle with. And then I've got, and it'll be, I think, probably a good place to sort of start. I thought we might start at a slightly more macro level. I've got depth, i.e. the depth in the club, and market, i.e. going to market. Eddie, I'm going to throw to you. We've got one position open in the roster at the moment. I think we need to save our season, and I think we need to go to the market. And I know we've got Galvin out. I know that Fainu's out, but there's something missing here in this team, and I think we don't want to let the season go if we can add something, and I think we need to add something to that back row.
Yeah, well, I thought Ice was really, really poor today, and I don't know. I'm hoping it's not a little bit like I feel with Bateman, where the change in body types and the change in back rowers is sort of becoming a little bit ineffective. But again, you look at Jayden Sullivan's performance today. He's the prototype back rower, big, strong, can offload. Okay, he can do something dumb, but he had a real impact on the game. And I just thought Ice, really poor. I guess he's trying hard, but not impacting the game like our other back rower, John Bateman. Safe half, he got monstered most times he ran the ball. He tried hard, but there's definitely not enough attacking threats in this team. And it was another game, Joel, where we mustered all of 12 points. And one of those tries was from a hit-up, and I actually don't know what happened in the second try because I left with 20 minutes to go, so someone has to tell me what happened.
I thought we really missed Sam Fainu today. He can play out on an edge, and he is that bigger body. He is a guy who can bust through tackles. And I think him being out today really hurt us in that regard. I think it also really hurt us in the prop rotation because he spent plenty of time in the middle as well. And I thought that was a big out today. And I think Safehalf's had a fairly good season this year, but I think he does really struggle when he has to start, when he has to get through a lot of work. I think that's when he doesn't have the dominance and the impact in the collision, and he ends up getting a slow play the ball because he quite often ends up on his back. So they were a couple of issues today, and I think Sam Fainu would have made a big difference to that starting to that side today, because I think if he was fit and available, he probably would have taken that second rower spot, and I think we would have been much more damaging if he was on the field.
And further to that, if you look at the West Tigers' performance, especially in the 20 minutes after half time, where Clemmer was off and Stefano was off, we at times looked to really lack any penetration at all. Twal tried hard; he had a couple of good runs, but Fainu there would have helped, and that's a weakness that we've got currently at the moment. Hopefully that improves next time. Eddie, to answer your question, what happened in the end for that second try? Well, it was actually, ironically, it was Sullivan who threw a nice little short ball to Kapoa. Was it Kapoa or...
It was Kapoa.
Yeah.
He actually ran a really nice line.
He did. And now that links me back to that point. Declan, I'll throw to you. Isaiah Papali, when he was playing for Parramatta, what was the number one trick he had in his playbook? It was running off nice balls into areas of space. I don't think I can remember him running a nice line and scoring a try or doing that for the West Tigers at all. We haven't utilised him anywhere near or in the capacity that we should be using Isaiah Papali.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50. I think he has looked good this year, like playing off Galvin, and Galvin not being there, I think, has hurt him. But I think it's more than just like outside of who he's playing with. I think like just his runs in general have been like less ferocious. I don't know what it is. Like just like maybe he moved here, and like when he had that breakout season, it was when the NRL kind of just chucked in the 7 tackle set. So maybe that was just like really good for him. And then when he came to Parramatta, it was kind of a last chance for him. Like he did get a 2-year contract, but like I think he just like had the desperate, like he just needed to have a good season to save his career, because he never really fired at the Warriors, and then he turned into one of those elite back throwers. But now, since he's moved with us, he's kind of reverted back to that player he was at the Warriors. Like he's not a bad player; he's a good player, but he's just not that destructive edge back thrower that we were really hoping for when we signed him. And I'm just not sure. I can't quite put my finger on it at the moment.
Let's talk about I think probably the thing that most of us have got on our mind, and it's certainly what I heard leaving the ground, what I've read on the forum, and that's around the performance of Jayden Sullivan. And Benji was asked in the post-match press conference about Sullivan's game. You could tell he was a little bit reticent to sort of say too much. He said he tried hard, maybe tried a bit too hard. We'll have a look at it during the week. But he did also say Galvin came straight back in. The gift that keeps on giving, Eddie, that's the gift of Pascoe and Lee and Fulton, is Jayden Sullivan. And I think he tried hard. But if he is the answer, I don't know what the question is. That was a very, very subpar performance.
Yeah, more of the same, unfortunately. And I do think he's trying things out there, but just looks like a one-trick pony. Like the best he's got is sort of the dummy and go. I think he might have tried it off a scrum early in the first half, and he nearly popped his head through. I think we might have got a penalty off that. But apart from that, there's really no redeeming aspects I'm finding of his game at the moment. And I don't know Jayden Sullivan, but he just strikes me as a guy that's just not very focused. He reminds me a bit of Nofa and Dane Laurie in that regard. So I just don't know where his career's going. And it's we've got to look for one of those clauses, Joel, that Manly have got in Schuster's contract where, it's written in the fine print where we can rip up your contract if you're not performing. Sadly, I don't think we can. But, yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for him because he's had 2 cracks now and obviously would want to do well. And I think he did try, but, yeah, not much went right.
What's disappointing for me, and the difference, I think it's actually a big difference between what we showed a couple of weeks ago against Parramatta, what we showed against Cronulla, and what we've shown the last 2 weeks. It does come down to that 5'8" spot. And Galvin's ability to straighten the attack, that Bud, with the way he actually does a show and go, he should be able to straighten the attack. But he just doesn't. The only time he does straighten is when he's running the ball himself. He is running our outside man way out of room. The structure and shape of him is pretty much really slow and really poor because we're going across field towards the corners and it's really hurting our attack. Now, I don't think our attack, even with Galvin there, is going to be world beaters, but we offer so much more. It's such a much more dangerous backline with him in that 5'8" spot. So while I'm disappointed over the last couple of weeks, I do have hope that attack can look better once we have Galvin back in that 6 jersey.
Looking at the bigger picture, though, Declan, we've got Sullivan for 4 years, and he doesn't appear to have... I think we would struggle to trade him tomorrow. I don't know what opportunities there are to get out of this deal, which is 4 years, and we've got Luai coming, we've got Galvin. And Fainu, of course, Latu Fainu. It's a concern. I think we've ended up with remember we were all waiting and counting down the clock for Josh Reynolds' contract to expire and Russell Packer. It feels like that to me. It feels like it's a real issue for the club.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it will be tough to move that deal. We're definitely going to have to chip in some money. I think that the main difference with Sullivan compared to someone like Josh Reynolds is that Sullivan is still at the start of his career, pretty much. Guys like Josh Reynolds, they were at the end and they're kind of just happy to take the money because they'd already earned a lot of money in their first grade career. And it was just like that kind of last check. But someone like Sullivan, he has to, at this age, or very, very soon, establish himself as a first grade footy player. So if he's not getting a run with us and he's stuck in reserve grade, maybe he would be willing to take a little bit less to get a release and then start somewhere. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be hard to move that contract because it's not like he's really, playing really well to, sell himself to other teams at the moment. And then maybe we could try and change him to a dummy half, 14 off the bench. That could be another option. But yeah, I'm not liking our chances of getting rid of him unless he was willing to take more money or just, agree to leave, which I'm not sure he will because it's been reported that he's on a fair wicket here.
Having a look at, we spoke a little bit last week about Api, who had the issue with his quad pre-game against the Dolphins. Maybe I think Gary was sort of saying, hypothesising maybe he didn't get a needle or he was definitely playing injured. I think he was playing injured again today. I thought his performance, although willing and there being lots of effort, Gary, did you have that same feeling? Now, then that also leads me into, well, why the hell did we have a hooker on the bench and we didn't even go to him and use him?
Yeah, there's a couple of points I want to raise about Api. The big one is we're playing him too many minutes. You have a look towards the end of that game, he was cramping up and he was slow getting up off the ground after being tackled or making a tackle. If we've got a hooker on the bench, then they need to rest him for a little bit. But he was also playing multiple positions today. There was a number of times he was out at first and second receiver. And that may have been to try and counter where we thought we were weak out at that 5'8" spot. But there was a number of times he was chiming in the back line. And I just think we're asking too much of him at the moment. I don't think we're getting the best out of him. I think you get so much more out of him if you're playing him for 60 minutes instead of 80. And very soon, it's not just going to be going down with cramp. If we keep overplaying him the way we are, I'm concerned he may get an injury soon. I was concerned a number of times when he went down today. He went down clutching at his knees, at one of his knees one of the times as well. And the first thought that popped into my head, I hope it's on ACL because we need him. We need him performing. But we're overplaying that hand at the moment. I think we really need to start using that hooker on the bench. If we don't think it's Simpkin, then put Jayden Sullivan in there. We've got to do something because playing him 80 minutes I don't think is going to work, especially for the entire season.
I think, it's like, I think we've looked our best this year when we're playing a hard, aggressive, direct game, but that's not easy, especially for someone like Api, who's leading that, line speed, and he set up our try today. And that's the worry I have with this side, is that we look our best when we're playing direct and trying to play physical, but how sustainable is that when you've got a thin squad and, a bottom four roster? So there's going to be days like today, and I don't want to sound like it's excuses because there were things I was really disappointed with today, but I wasn't overly surprised. Even in the first 10 minutes, I just felt like St George were getting off the line, hitting us really hard. We were getting bent backwards when we were running the ball. And I think that's something this side's going to have to learn, that if you want to try and play almost a Penrith style, which is fast and direct, then it's not easy to do it over a long period of time. And we just looked off from the jump today, I thought.
Yeah, I just thought we were lacking too much in the forwards, I think. When you got guys like Kapoa coming on the bench, and I thought actually Kapoa played reasonably well today, but he's not. I don't want to be going to him when we're a couple of guys down. I want to be going to him when we're down 2 to 3 guys in that back row, because I don't think consistently you're going to get that level of game out of him. But I just don't think we had enough impact through the forwards today. I thought Stefano tried really hard, but I don't think he's had the impact today that he had the last couple of weeks either. So I thought we looked best today when we're going direct, but we also didn't stick at that for very long either. We're most dangerous going up the middle, but the majority of our plays, and it was probably because we were behind in the game, but we're shifting the ball left or right constantly through the game, and doing it at that slow pace that we spoke about in the pre-season. You're just not going to trouble a side if you're not holding up the defence and if you're not coming at them with speed. And we didn't do any of that today.
Benji said, just reverting back to that post-match press conference, probably our worst performance of the season. He said it was a long way off our standards, and we were looking for a soft way to win, which is, I think, a pretty good point. He said they had more energy and more intent. We couldn't build pressure. It was the first game that I'd been to for a while, Declan. I'm sitting in the grandstands where, excellent seats. Thanks, Yachty. It was fantastic. But going back to that earlier point that I made, I don't know, and it links together nicely with what Gary is saying about wanting to play that physical sort of muscle game. I just don't think we're the team for that, because if you look at our team, Stefano's a big man, and Fanua Pole's a big man, and Clemmer's tall, maybe not as imposing, as some others. But if you looked at that Dragons team, even Lomax is a big unit. Like, it seems to me that in the NRL in 2024, you need to have that power game, and we may be able to match it here and there, ambush the odd team, but I think we're at a disadvantage once again because we just don't have that physical presence, especially from our centres and especially from our back row.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Joe, because I think that the thing that really gave the Dragons a leg up this game was their edges. I think that if you compare the stats of both Meadows, it's probably not drastically different. But then, just when the Dragons started their sets, they got Zach Lomax and Ravalawa starting off. We could never get them on their backs, first, second tackle. And then it made the jobs of the Dragons forwards just easier to kind of come in off the back of that. But yeah, it's a really tough one because, and even Moses Sully, he's a massive dude, and we really struggled to put him on the ground. And then that has a flow-on effect on the forwards. But it was a little bit disappointing that we went off that middle game, because when we just spread the ball left to right and right to left, it just looked really slow and clunky. I'm not sure why it is. I think that maybe Sullivan might not have been communicating as well as someone like Lachlan Galvin was when he was there, because they just looked lost. And, I think particularly Fatapi had a few carries where it just didn't really look like he knew what line he was going to run. But yeah, I think it just comes back to the outside back starting sets, and I think that just in this NRL just makes it so much easier for the forwards to kind of do a good job when they're coming on a quick play the balls, as opposed to Charlie Sains getting put on his back. someone like Dream Bull also not really generating like a quick play of the ball. I think it has a knock-on effect on these sorts of things.
Mentioning Ravalawa, like we continued to kick to him all day, and he is one of the threats in the Dragons team. So that frustrated me, although Lomax was also playing out of his skin as well. Eddie, Benji is starting to enter that period where the pressure is starting to be applied a little bit, obviously because of the results. I mean, this is make or break time. We all get a little bit of, we all get that honeymoon period at the start, but the pressure is going to start, and the reality of the situation is going to start. It's difficult. Penrith, I think we've got Penrith and then Brisbane, I think, from memory. So it doesn't get any easier. What are your thoughts on some of the things that you saw out there today in terms of coaching structure and strategy? Albeit, again, coming back to that point, I think we are definitely missing a couple of guys that would have got us in better stead today. I don't know if we would have won, but I think we would have been in better stead.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about Benji. I think his mentality and everything he said, and that's all. We're not inside the four walls, so we don't see how they train, and we see how they respond, obviously, on the field. But I think he's been consistent with that. And but just going back to that point, we're sort of labouring on about those slow sort of backline movements, and obviously they were sort of coming off slow play of the balls. But the question I sort of have is, when you're doing those either block plays or sweeping plays, who that's getting the ball has speed or power? Like, honestly, tell me one of our back seven that gets in the Dragons team. Like, the Dragons are a team that's going to probably run 10th or 11th this year, but you could argue maybe Dream Buller gets in over Tyrell Sloan because he's a lot busier, but he's certainly not as dangerous in terms of his pace. And I had a bit of a gripe with his kick returns today. I know he's a slight guy, but I thought he was like just cumbersome, his kick returns, like just so casual. And like, you're right. And then we got Staines on tackle 2 and Tupou, and there's just no momentum, and we're just working our way out of our own end. But I look at that Dragon backline, and I think I'd nearly take all of them over us, including Kyle Flanagan at 6 and obviously Ben Hunt. But you look at guys like Sully, and just powerful guys, Ravalawa. I guess they were kicking to him because he can make errors, and they did make some stupid errors today, the Dragons. That's the thing I'd be almost more frustrated as a Dragons fan, because I think they've got a lot of talent. But I just worry that this, especially since the rule changes, it's all about speed and power. And I don't think we got the body types or the talent to create numbers and overlaps in the back line at the moment.
Just on Dream Buller, Eddie and I have had a few disagreements about Dream Buller, especially over the off-season. But a couple of things need to be mentioned. Those kick returns haven't been just today. He's been looking to offload and have the wingers take that first hit up off the kick. So he's been doing that quite a bit over the start of this season. I don't think he's not looking to run the ball back at all. And what we do need is we need someone to come back, and we need him to come back with the ball hard and use a bit of footwork. And it's not about busting a tackle, but he's got the footwork where he can bring the ball back at pace and at least get in between defenders so he can get to the ground quicker and get a decent play of the ball that our wingers can then play off the back of that. I think that's something he needs to really have a look at, because I think he is very tentative bringing the ball back on kicks. But he also, and I have started to labour on about this quite a bit, he needs to straighten the attack. Today, he actually ran into his outside men's holes a couple of times. Holes that his outside men, his centres, should really be hitting at pace, and he's still going across field and going into that hole. He needs to straighten and create some room for them and have them hitting those holes quite hard. And he just hasn't been doing that. I'm still really confident about him as a footballer, but there is a couple of things he really needs to do that will take his game to another level, and he just isn't doing it at the moment. And I think it's really crucial for our side that he does start doing it, because with our lack of penetration in attack, he can really add to our back line, and I think it's a key area he needs to have a look at.
Yeah, I thought Buller was interesting because, he probably didn't have the quality impact on the ball, but he did run for over 200 meters. So, I know that's, obviously, like, all your points are valid, but I think he was trying really hard, but it just wasn't really coming off. But yeah, I do agree, especially that whole right side in general. I don't think either of our wingers have scored a try yet on the left or the right. So I think that kind of just shows you that they're really struggling on those edges to find any sort of syncness or anything like that. And I think Buller's just a part of that. But I thought he tried really hard, which was good to see when it wasn't really going his way. It was a little bit disappointing when Zach Lomax got a few ones up on him with the high balls. Like that kind of put him off, and he kind of shied away after that. I was a little bit disappointed with that because I would have liked to have seen him, go for it and not drop confidence. But yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag.
It's definitely not lack of effort though. I think the effort is really high. It's just a few things in the way he's attacking he needs to have a look at. Sorry, Eddie.
No. I didn't want to sound too critical because he was busy, and I saw those stats over 200 meters. And Sloan, I think only ran for 70 meters, didn't really have much impact on the game. But it's just, again, like I asked that question, who has got the speed or the power in this team to be a problem? Because, Olam's got the power. He came in for a couple of early runs and tried to get some sets going. But often you see so many tries created in the NRL off either back rowers running hard and getting an offload or just creating eyes in the defensive line, and then you get space out wide. But at the moment, with Seyfarth and Papali'i, they're not really a threat. And then you go wider, there's no real pace. That first try the Dragons scored, we're not capable of scoring a try like that, I don't think. Whether you just burn people for speed on the outside, I don't think we got a finger on it. And that was in the first 2 minutes. So you can't coach speed, unfortunately, and you can coach intent. But power, guys like Seyfarth, they're doing their best. They're outmatched out there. So I don't know if I have the answers, whether it's a coaching thing with the way, obviously, I don't know if Robbie's in charge of the attack or he should be saying things about straightening the attack and stuff. But you've also got to have the little bit of nous when you're out there, which guys like Galvin seem to have.
I think you raised a very valid point earlier in the pod, Eddie, about Bud not being able to organise his outside men as well as Galvin does. When Galvin's playing, he's getting a lot more space because I believe he actually has some of those props and those second rollers running much better lines. There's been a number of times, even in the trials, that try he set up for Tape in the trials where he had both the Fainu brothers run really nice lines. And I think he's just getting them into better position because the big thing about Galvin, and when I watched him at that Parramatta game, he's in position for the next play so early. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of, without the ball, he's sprinting from one side of the field to get in position for the next play. And I think he's demanding those players around him to be in those positions to set up that shape and to run the lines that he wants them to run to create the space. And that's holding the defensive line up really, really well. When he gets, he did it with Sione, and he did it with Sam Fainu. When he gets them coming back on that inside line, that really holds up that defense, and it gives Buller that room that he can then straighten. And at the moment, when Buller does straighten, he's taken that space for himself. What I'm hoping is over the next 2 months, when he gets to play with Galvin a little bit more, that we're still able to get that room for him to straighten, but he starts putting those outside men, the centres and the wingers, into a little bit of space. And I think that will make our attack look a lot better. And I think we'll see a much better structured attack next week once Galvin's there, because just his effort to get into position early, I couldn't believe how quickly he was getting into position in that Parramatta game.
I think the thing that worries me about Galvin coming back is that the whole team in general isn't playing as disciplined as they were against the Eels and the Sharks. Would Galvin have had the opportunity to win the game with that break if the entire team hadn't been making those 1% efforts and not giving away tries? Because we conceded a try early and then we conceded a try just before halftime. And if you're going to be one of those teams that grits and grinds and focuses on your defense, those are just things you can't really do. So, and it's just such a yin and yang thing. Like when you defend well, it makes your attack easier. And I'm just really worried that Galvin's going to come in and the team just has kind of lost all those 1%ers that we talked about at the start of the pod, because it just doesn't seem to be happening at the moment. I think until we focus on that first, I think our attack's definitely going to struggle.
What gives me a little bit of confidence is that Dragons trial. We played busted and we played terrible that entire game. He was still able to structure that back line and get guys running the lines that he wanted them to run, even when we're being dominated in that game. Now, it's a lot of pressure to be putting on an 18-year-old kid, and I don't think it's something he's going to be able to maintain for the entire season. I think he's going to be a little bit up and down over this season because he's 18 years old. But I think he just makes such a difference to the structure of those outside men that I expect us to look a lot better next weekend. I'm not too concerned about our middles getting up the field. I'm hoping we see Steph have a little bit more of an impact in the next game, because I thought he worked really, really hard today. But I don't think he was busting the tackles that we've seen him bust over the last couple of weeks. But I do think Galvin does make that much of a difference when you compare him to what Sullivan's doing out there. I don't think he's doing anything at all to really organise his outside men. And I think that's where that key difference comes in.
Just a couple of things. So that first try, we were really playing a very compressed defence, and that works when it's Staines, because Staines has the speed to be able to turn around and prop and chase, and not always. It didn't happen last week in the first try against the Dolphins, but more often than not, he has the speed to be able to counter that if they do get past us. But Tupu not quite as fast or as agile getting back and around. That was really disappointing, that start to the game. But Eddie, I wanted to, because now the whips are starting to crack in the season, and I want to really go back to that point, because it's something that I think is really important, not just for this season, but moving forward. If you look at the Sharks, and everybody probably agrees the Sharks are going to play top 8 football, they're going to play semi-final football this year. The Dragons, you said maybe 10th, 11th. They've got the potential, if their injuries are good to them, that they may sneak into a 7th or 8th spot. My point being, if you look at the Sharks backline, where Talakai is now coming off the bench, but the guys they've got there that play that power game, that play exactly what you're talking about, that are the polar opposite to us, week in, week out, that's what you need in this game. Otherwise, you're going to be jagging the odd win, but you're not going to be playing semi-final football. We have to strengthen this part of the squad.
No, I 100% agree, and that's what I was sort of getting at earlier when I said it's going to be exhausting. You look at Api after every game; he looks exhausted, win or lose, and that takes, I think, a lot out the way we played against Cronulla and Parramatta, because things have to go right. The opposition have to sort of go poorly. We have to play almost above ourselves. That's just to get a win by a point against Parramatta, and then you have days like today, like. If I line up St George's squad with our squad, their best is better than our best. Okay, their worst might be worse, capable of beating them, don't get me wrong, but it's still going to be a long season. I just hope that we don't go backwards as a squad. We don't start getting flogged every week and stuff. But it's not like it wasn't. The first month was good, but anyone can sort of win a game or two in the first month. It's once you get past that first month and into 6 or 7 weeks at the grind and the bumps and the bruises and the injuries start to kick in. And the reality is, we're still probably the worst squad in the competition outside of the Gold Coast, who got beaten in Golden Point today. Like, I've seen a lot of games this year, and even the Bulldogs, I think they got more power and more speed than us. Teams like the Dolphins, who I think are going to be 11, 12, like the Bulldogs, they got more speed, more power. So it's going to take a lot of effort for us to win games at the moment. So you're right. It comes back to roster and the type of players you're trying to recruit.
Yeah, I think it's always that danger game for us, isn't it? We have a few good wins against, some like pretty high-rated teams, but then we come against a team at home that we should be like a good chance beating, and then we just fold. And I think that comes down to the senior players not being those pillars of consistency that we need. And it was funny because last week, everyone against the Parramatta Eels, after that, everyone was kind of like bagging us for sending Jerome Luai on big money because we had Galvin. But it just shows you, like, you need these consistent first-grade players, leaders who play out well every single week. And hopefully someone like Luai next year, even though we're talking about this year now, but someone like him next year will have that consistency. Because although agencies have tried really hard, I think we kind of saw that when he's like being the organizer and trying to curate, it doesn't necessarily work as well as we would like it to.
Listening to a Phil Gould podcast, it might have been in the preseason or something, and he was talking around recruitment, and he said you've got to try and buy points. You've got to try and buy points. So it's like you can try as hard as you want in the NRL. If you don't have people who can score tries or set up tries, you're going to struggle. Like we do well. We march down the field well some games, and then last year we were out metering teams by 400 metres. They had a look at the stats today again. Very similar. I think we ran for 50 more metres, had 50% of the ball, but we don't have enough people that can score tries or set up tries. So, like Declan said, Luai, hopefully, we haven't seen him at 7, but he's definitely going to be an upgrade to our squad.
But we need to be able to ice those moments, to execute those moments. And sometimes we, again, at least in this performance and against the Dolphins last week, we have struggled to have that class to be able to ice those moments. Because every team gets those opportunities in a game. You always get 4 or 5 or 6 opportunities, and it's whether you can take the majority of those is whether you're a good team or not. And that game today, we weren't able. We had some opportunities, but just weren't able to execute the plays and get it right. Tiger 5150 with a late entry for one word. His one word was dumb. The Olam penalty for holding on summed the game up, just kept turning over the ball and momentum. Agree with everyone's opinion on Sullivan. He says, fire up the shredder for Sullivan. He said, I think our lightweight bench really told today with Steph and Clem having to play long minutes. Hard to find positives, but at times our defence held well. Back 3 were busy but ineffective, and that's a really good summation, isn't it? They were busy but mostly, ineffective. Thought Caesar was our best again. And again, I did this on the pod last Sunday night, very similar circumstances. Some of Aiden Caesar's defensive work is very, very good. We talk about players that make a difference to an aspect of the game. Caesar does that. The amount of times that he's there to make that tackle that needs to be made is definitely helping us with our defence. I'll come to you in a sec, Eddie. Jedi Tiger said, I hope Sullivan doesn't see first grade again. Absolutely terrible. I don't care how much we have to pay to offload him. Make it happen. And that seems to be something that a lot of people are saying. Yes, Eddie?
No, just on Caesar, I didn't think he was good today. I'd be interested to see what the boys think. But I know it got a bad bounce, but if you kick it on tackle 2, I think we were 6-4 up, and we'd made a bust down maybe the left-hand side, and we spin it right. If you kick it on tackle 2, you need to get a result. You can't turn the ball over. And, okay, it bounced back over Charlie Staines' head or whatever. But that set, we were starting to get the momentum. You know, if we get tackle 4 or 5, we get a try. It's 12-4. I think they went up the other end and scored off that. And it was 10-6 Dragons and the whole game. So just, okay, the bounce of the ball could bounce anyway. And maybe on another day, he looks like a genius with that play. But that was a big, I thought, 10, 12-point turnaround in the game there.
The play was on, but the kick was really poor. At no point was that ball likely to end up where we wanted it to be. And if you're going for that play, in my opinion, you need to put it in a spot where your winger can run onto it and catch it on the full, because that takes the bounce out of the play. So the kick was too close to the sideline. I actually thought the most likely outcome as it was going through the air is it was going to kick on and go straight over the sideline. It did the opposite and bounced back in field. But it was a poor kick. The play was it was on. I don't know if it was the right choice in that situation, but the execution was really poor. It wasn't a good kick at all.
I was giving him a pat on the back for defence. I wasn't necessarily calling him out for having a great offensive game. But
he also drives our line speed, Joel.
Yes.
He and Api, they're the ones doing the work to get us up off our line. So I think it's a really crucial role that he's playing in that regard as well.
According to my notes, Eddie, the try that took them to 10-6 came off I believe it was Api's kick that hit the line. It was close.
Out on the full.
Yeah, out on the full. They marched downfield. They scored a really soft try. But I thought where the game, or where we certainly ultimately shot ourselves in the foot, was not just that play, but 5 minutes later when Sullivan on the first tackle fired this bullet into Fatape, and Fatape dropped it on the first. And I thought that in that moment, this is not going to happen today. It's hard for a young guy to come in without any first grade experience and perform week to week. But I'm starting to get a few concerns about Fatape. We mentioned him maybe not having a huge amount of. Maybe we weren't playing on the same sheet enough. But there's a few things with his game that makes me think he needs to drop back to reserve grade and work on a few things. Stafford Toa was at the game. He looked pretty fit. Naden should be, hopefully, maybe as an option. Declan, what do you think about Fatape after, five first grade games?
Yeah, I think it was a really tough outing for him because we just talked about if you're going to be a first grader, you need to play consistently week in, week out. And that can be tough for centers because they're on edge. But I just think this was the game that, he did struggle. He made some poor mistakes that looked like he wasn't really on the same page as his halves. His carriage wasn't that great either. And it sucks because I thought he did a really good job the first few rounds of the competition, marking some pretty good guys. But I think that I'll be bringing in Brett Naden now. He's just got, he's got a brain explosion in him, but he's just kind of got that kind of athleticism and that ability to break the line at a first grade level. And I think for Tappy, to his credit, we never signed him to be a starting centre. He's on a development contract still. So I don't think there's any shame in him going back to New South Wales Cup to, work on his craft. And it's also, I think, worth to mention that he's actually a left side dominant centre. So he's actually playing on the right side for us, which is his unnatural position. So maybe sending him to New South Wales Cup, putting him on the right side will actually help him. And then when he comes back to first grade, he'll be more comfortable in that position. But I just think at this point of the season, what the team needs, I think Naden is probably worth the risk, even though you can find himself in the sin bin or getting sent off sometimes, which is a little bit of a worry. But I think it's worth the risk at this point.
Yeah, I'd be looking at Naden as well. I don't think there's any shame in having a young guy who's got, 5 games now under his belt or 4 games under his belt, dropping back and spending some time in reserve grade. As long as your communication around it is really good, telling what you want him to work on, what you want to see down in those reserve grade games, and give him opportunities to show that. I think that would be really good for his development, and I'd like to see Naden come in next week as well.
On that thing what's the coach's name? Benji. It's been a long day. Benji said about energy. Eddie, do you buy into that? We all seem to agree that we lacked energy in the first half against the Dolphins. I thought we were just really outplayed as much as anything. I don't know if it's an energy thing. I think you just get zapped when you're not taking your opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think. Again, I'm labouring the point, but I think the way our squad is, when you get a couple of injuries and you're trying to play that direct style, it's hard to do every week. But the disappointing thing about these 2 games is I felt I could sense in the first 5 minutes we're going to lose. And, how often does it happen? When I was surprised we were a slight betting favourite in this game, which really surprised me, but we were. But how often does it happen that we're at home in front of a sellout crowd and we just give them no reason to get involved in the game? We give them no opportunity to get involved in the game. And that, if you're going to run out of puff, fair enough. But the first 10 minutes, I thought St. George's line speed is better. They're hitting harder. And that's the thing that Benji, I think, would be disappointed with is the starts. And it's been a problem in 4 of the 5 first halves this year. I think Cronulla was the only good first half, so I don't know whether he has to get the Madge baseball bat out in the shed beforehand. I think that's been retired since Madge left, but maybe he has to get it out to fire him up. So I don't know.
Well, Gary, you were at the ground. That Dragons try after 2 or 3 minutes, it took the wind out of the sails of the crowd, and we never got back on, back into it after that. In terms of the crowd, we're all sitting there, just we talk about body shape and we talk about energy and we talk about this and that, but there's still sometimes that something going on with the mental aspects of this team. That's, I think, what is most disappointing is that we didn't play like the team that we've seen glimpses of. We sort of reverted back a bit today.
I think, especially in regards to talking about the crowd energy as well, that first try was such a soft and easy try. They just so simply stripped us of numbers down that side, and it was just simple. And it is really disappointing because it's been a long time since we've had such a good crowd out at Campbelltown, and Eddie's exactly right. The team didn't really give the crowd a chance to get involved in the game because a couple of minutes in, I'd spent half an hour trying to get into the ground.
Yeah.
Just got to my seat, and then a couple of minutes in, we're letting that try in. I think there would have been a lot of people in that situation, and having a look at what was happening there today, there was probably a lot of people who didn't get in until that try was scored. And that was, like, it was great to have a huge sellout crowd there today. But getting into the ground was hard, and then getting in and seeing our side just wilt on that first try was really disappointing, I thought.
Yeah, it was a real opportunity miss, wasn't it? Because of all this talk about, us like putting more, resources and emphasis into like growing our presence in the Southwest, and then to have a performance like that. But I'm curious from your guys' perspective, because I was looking at the TV and it didn't feel like a Tigers home game, like just the crowd, the way the team was playing. It's definitely not anything to do with the crowd, I'm sure. It's just the team. But we've just always kind of had this problem in recent history. I think it's 9 in a row that we've lost at Campbelltown, where we just don't get up for these games like they do at Leichhardt. I'm not sure. Like I would love to like be inside the four walls, just like ask the coaching staff, the players, like they're just not like, is Campbelltown just this like kind of place to just they're not. It doesn't feel like a home ground. It just feels like a neutral, because it looked like a neutral venue. If you're going to blindfold me and tell me that like you have to guess where they're playing, and I wasn't sure, I would have said that was a neutral ground because they played like it. And I'm just not sure why.
Well, we haven't won out there since 2020, so it's a long time between victories, as you say, nine games. But there's a couple of things there. I think if we're at Leichhardt with 16 or 17,000 and the West Tigers started like that, I've been there where Leichhardt's as quiet as a church. It's not that Leichhardt is this phenomenal thing. It's just that more often than not, the West Tigers, for one reason or another, seem to be more revved up and ready to go. But, I mean, the thing is, too, is that I think a crowd needs to build into it as well. When you're not playing any lower grade games, the atmosphere doesn't grow through the afternoon. If you're standing outside the gates in the car park 15 minutes before the game starts and you're not in the zone yourself as a fan. And that was just ridiculous. The lines today to get in the sun, to try and get into the ground. I've never seen lines like that at Campbelltown before. You can't not have some sort of curtain raiser to even out the crowd coming into the ground. It was crazy. Gary?
Yeah, so the gates didn't open until 2:30 today with a 4 o'clock kickoff. That means you're trying to get 17,000 people into the ground in an hour and a half. Mm. And I think there was issues with Apple Pay not working at the gates as well, so that caused delays as well. But everyone's checking in with their phones now. They don't have the brightness levels right, so the readers aren't reading it. It took a long time to get people into the ground today. Like, I literally sat down with 2 minutes to go before kickoff. And it does hurt that atmosphere. It does. Like, I sat down feeling frustrated before the game had even started. Mm. And maybe if we had went down and scored the first try, I could have shaken that off. But we let in such an easy try. It was very, very deflating once I got into the ground. That's one thing. It was great to get a sellout crowd there this weekend. Our club needs to be better in that regard. Opening the gates at 2:30 for a 4 o'clock kickoff just isn't good enough. You've got to put something on inside the ground, even if there are no games there, to get people into the ground and spread that out and allow the atmosphere to build.
Hmm. Well, I mean, that's a problem, isn't it? Because, I mean, everyone's arriving at 3:45 because if there's nothing on beforehand, what are you going into the ground at 2:34 anyway? Hmm. So, like, I sort of went to one of the pubs for about 10 minutes and then at 3:25, I think, got outside the gate and it was at least 20, 25 minutes to get in. But, yeah, I'd just be interested to hear from the club there how much control they have over, whether you get to play one or two games beforehand. Because if we're so big and if it's not going to be tokenistic about we want to have a big effort at Campbelltown, you've got to sell out crowd, you're going to put one game on. You're not going to put Magpies on. I saw they played St George. I don't know if it was a St George game or something. I don't know if
they played at Lidcombe.
Lidcombe yesterday.
So what's the point? What is the point of playing a game at Lidcombe? Because West used to play at Lidcombe 40 years ago and playing in front of 300 people, or playing it as a curtain raiser in front of 15,000 people that are finding their seat and the atmosphere is building at Campbelltown. There's no logic in any of this, guys. There's no logic.
Doesn't appear any logic. I'd like to actually get an answer from the club on that because maybe they have no control over the State Cup draw and whether they want to preserve the surface, but it's the first game of the year for the NRL at Campbelltown, so the surface looked immaculate from where I was sitting. So I was bemused. And like Gary, I was frustrated when I got into the ground because I was planning on getting there with 20 minutes to go and maybe looking for a seat in the sun or something, or sitting on the hill, but a lot of people would have missed that first 5 or 10 minutes, I reckon.
The rumour on Twitter, X, was that West Ashfield, they didn't want to have the State Cup play because of their relationship with the Leeds club at Campbelltown. Sorry, I forgot the name of it, because they've got a really poor relationship. So they, rather than play at Lidcombe, then, be the curtain raiser. But I 100% agree with you guys. I don't think it makes any sense to play, Lidcombe Oval when there's 300 people. And that's just a rumour. That's just what I heard. But, that's what I heard. And it makes sense. Well, it doesn't make sense, but that could be a reason as to why it happened.
The West Tigers is working really hard on improving that relationship with West Campbelltown. Yeah. There was a number of events on at West Campbelltown today. The players had an after-game function where they were doing signing sessions. So that relationship is obviously trying to be rebuilt by the club. It's been, I don't think, West Campbelltown's done some sponsorship, but they haven't been heavily involved in our club since they gave up their ownership stake. And I think there's a real push from our new administration and the CEO especially to rebuild that relationship. Even to the point where West Campbelltown had those blow-up men things going during the game as well, trying to have some connection to the game. And I think if West Magpies don't want to be part of that kind of discussion and that improvement of the relationship, or West Ashfield don't, then that's something we've got to work really hard at. We're supposed to be one club. If we're not one club and different parts are fighting with different parts of another part of the club, then we've got to get that sorted out. There should be no reason, because two parts of the club aren't getting on, that reserve grade's not played before. If that was the reason,
it's three parts of the club.
That's a problem.
Gary, it's three parts of the club. And then you've added Balmain in as well. It's four parts of the club that's been in dispute for 25 years and holding this club back, and it's not stopping, and it's a concern. Eddie?
No, I was just going to say there were a lot of Dragons fans there today, but they're a big brand, Dragons, and they're fans that have some fans out there. But I still thought it was probably an 80-20 split in favour of the Tigers. Like, there were a lot of Tigers jerseys out there today, and it would have been a genuine home crowd. There was just barely an opportunity to get into the game, and I don't believe in the, Leichhardt has a better atmosphere. I've heard Campbelltown have a good atmosphere. We just, for some reason, I don't know what it is. Like, I know I'm not expecting to go 7 for 9 there, but 0 for 9 and those sort of performances, I don't know. I feel bad because I want it to work out there.
Yeah, absolutely, and all the ingredients were there, but the football team just wasn't able to get it over the line.
Most important part.
Yeah. Before the game, and I want to make this point too, that if you want, because we did say, like, Campbelltown, MacArthur people get to the game. I think if the Campbelltown community wants the West Tigers playing there as well, the business owners in that area need to really let the council know that they want West Tigers games there as well. Money needs to be spent on Campbelltown. It needs to be improved, and the council is ultimately responsible for that. And as I was saying to Steve at the Ambush event, I was saying, you've got 15,000, 17,000 people coming into this community here at Lumia. That's a massive thing. So the business owners should be rallying and letting the council know that they want them to support the West Tigers to get the games and the events happening there, because it brings money into the community. For example, I went and bought lunch before the game across the road in Junk Food Alley there, but I wouldn't have gone there if I wasn't going for the game. So, that's exactly what they need to be doing. Tell that council, because that council seems to me like they're not prioritising, or haven't been prioritising, the West Tigers for a long time, Gary.
And there's obviously is a lot of support for the games being down there, because they sold out all the corporates like 2 weeks ago. So the support from local businesses is obviously there for the West Tigers to be playing there. So let's get it sorted out.
The Ambush event, I thought it was another success. I thought it went really, really well. And Gary, the main takeaway point from it was Gary Barnier was the guest, and Gary was, again, very forthright with different aspects of the review and the process. But I did take some heart from what he was saying, which is that the senior executives at the Holman Barnes Group appear to be backing the findings of the review, which is fantastic news.
Yeah, I personally have been quite concerned since the changes at the Holman Barnes Group, the change in chairman and deputy chairman. I thought that had the potential to put the brakes on the changes going through. Gary came across very confident today that it shouldn't be an issue. He does think it's something we do still need to keep an eye on, but I don't think it's an issue at this point. The big thing that came across to me is this next step I think needs to happen quite quickly, which is getting those independent board members into the West Tigers board is really crucial, and that needs to happen. I think I want it happening as soon as possible. The longer we wait for that kind of does leave it a little bit open for there's positions on the board, and maybe some group can change their mind. We need to get those independent directors in, and that needs to happen soon.
But I just want to really make the point that the independent directors are not the reason why it may take a little bit of time, or what's different here. And what we need to keep in mind is the club is not looking just for people who, you get a director's jacket because you've been a fan for 50 years. They're actually looking for people that bring skill sets. And it looks like the bar is pretty high in terms of that skill set to be on the board, which is fantastic. We've got to do that.
Yeah, there's going to be a skill matrix, or hopefully that's being set up at the moment, for what we want from a West Tigers director, what we want from a West Tigers board member. And the applicants have to meet that skill set. And if they don't have the skills required to be on our board, then there's no position for them on our board. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, because I think that the people we've had on our board have been quite successful in their careers. But we want a really high caliber candidates for our board. We want really high caliber directors on our club. So, and Gary pointed this out today. So when we are making decisions around stadium and our stadium plan moving forward, we have really highly capable business people in those roles. So we start making those right decisions, and I think that's crucial. And yes, it's taking some time, but it's something I hope we see happen quite soon.
And I think the thing is, as much as I'm in a bad mood about it, and I hate losing, if you look at Richardson's first year when he was in charge of South, if you look at the performances that year, they really struggled. It happened. My understanding was the club was told a couple of years ago that there was the club had 3 or 4 first graders, and out of a squad of 30 people. Now, that may be true or may not be true, but I happen to probably think it was true. And I think we're probably at around the 10 or 12 number fully fit at the moment. But we've got a long way still to come. Like, Luai is going to help, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. So as much as we're frustrated and disappointed and upset about today, and we feel like beating our heads against the wall, and we're so sick of being here, it's hard because we do need some degree of patience, and we do need the processes and the massive amount of change that's happened to sort of come to maturity, Eddie.
Oh, I agree. We could win. We could win the wooden spoon again this year and have 4 wins, and I still think Shane Richardson's the right man. But just be real about this. Like, he's a ruthless operator. He's not going to fluff around with these Holman Barnes people. If they want to dilly-dally around or put people in who he doesn't want, he'll go back to South Sydney. Like, South Sydney, they got issues at the moment, but they got powerful people. Russell Crowe, James Packer, these guys. If they want to pay him more than we do, he'll say, "See you later, West Tigers. I'll do 6 months. I'll get you playing at some hole, and they'll leave." Ivan Cleary did the same to us. So I'm just saying, just be on red alert, West Tigers. Don't stuff this up again.
Yeah, there really needs to be some sort of like movement on that deal, doesn't there, to have Richardson there? Because I agree with Eddie. I think he's just the kind of like perfect guy for us, because he's just a dictator in a good way. Like, he just like goes one way. If you're not with him, then you're not going to be there. And I think for a club that's just had to pander to all these different factions for like pretty much our entire existence, he just seems like the kind of guy that's just perfect for us. The scary part is, though, that all these, kind of sections, they're all going to have their say, and that could put someone like him off the job, and that would just be the worst. I think that could just be as bad as when Cleary left us, to be honest, if not even worse. So hopefully, we get some positive news on that front soon.
The big thing is, as long as the Holman Barnes group goes ahead with the recommendations, which the indication that we heard today is that seems extremely likely.
Yep.
The ownership groups don't have a lot of say in our club under the new constitution and new structure of the club. Their input will be restricted to some reserved matters. And it will be things like home grounds and those sort of big ones, but anything football related, they won't be having a say on. And I think that's really crucial moving forward. We've already got it cleared up that we had in the past where board members were approaching the coach, were approaching players and having discussions with players and coaches. That's already been cleared up by Shane Richardson. The only person that approaches approaches Benji Marshall now is Shane Richardson. He's Shane Richardson's employee. A board member does not go to Benji Marshall and ask him questions or tell him what he thinks he should be doing. They have to go to their chairman, who's Barry O'Farrell, who then goes to the CEO, and it's done in a proper manner. We just had people going and telling the coach their opinion and what they thought, and that's part of the reason why we end up in the mess we have. So we've partially got all that in alignment now, and once this constitutional part of it and the board's in place, then the say of our ownership group, so the Holman Barnes group, the West Magpies, and the Balmain Tigers, gets reduced to just these these reserved matters. I think that's going to make a huge difference to our club moving forward. And I think it's really crucial that Shane Richardson stays. I think what he's giving to our club is really important, and his dictatorship style, he's going to make decisions that I really don't agree with. But he's going to make them in the best interest of the club, and he's not going to care that it's not a decision I agree with or that Eddie agrees with. And I think that's really important in that role. He should listen to me probably a little bit more than most people, but I think that's really important. But what these changes, these recommendations have the most potential for is to set this club up for success no matter who's in that role. Because the recommendations are that CEO role is going to have a skills matrix. And if you don't meet that skills matrix, then you're not appointed to that job. So this is all about setting this club up for future success, no matter who's in those roles, because we're going to be getting highly skilled people into those roles. And I think that's really important to remember as well. But we can't lose Shane Richardson at this point. I think it's really critical he stays.
Yeah, critical juncture, absolutely. And isn't it funny how the leaks have stopped? I think we've worked out where the leaks were coming from. You look back where we were 12 months ago when everything was being played out in the media. I like the way it's being run better today, and you're right, Gary. Shane Richardson's going to make some decisions that are maybe not very popular with some people, but we've got to back him because he's got the track record of success and building success and taking clubs from the bottom to the top. And I think we're really fortunate that we've got him in our corner. I'd rather have him with us than against us. Declan?
Yeah, just on Richardson, when all this rumours came out that he's been linked back to South Sydney, from your guys' perspective, what do you reckon would be in his mind at the moment? Because he's done all this stuff at South Sydney and he's achieved the premiership, but he's got those pre-existing relationships. But then with us, that's a massive mountain to climb. But if he does climb that, that'd be great for his legacy. So does he kind of go back to where he's already achieved as much as he can achieve, but he is familiar, or does he take a punt with us where it's very unpredictable in terms of the politics of the club? But if he does achieve it, he could be on the Mount Rushmore of rugby league administrators. What do we reckon?
If Richardson goes back to South, he goes back without all the power. See, how it works for Richardson is start where there's a vacuum, grab all the power, make all the hard decisions, get the success. You've got all the control, you've got all the power, and then you decide when you exit. Whereas if you go back to South now, you're coming back with only half the wind in your sails. So I don't think it's attractive to him. I think he sees this as being the third or fourth time in his career where he's been able to go through the transition from the basement to the penthouse, and that's his goal for West Tigers, and that's just not the same opportunity at Souths, Gary.
As long as the club puts in place the stuff they told him they were going to put in place.
Yeah.
If we start to slide backwards on some of these decisions that we told him were going to happen, that's when I think there's a risk of him looking elsewhere. As long as the club sticks to what it says, and if you read that article, that's pretty much what the article said the other day as well, that the club has to make sure it's sticking to those commitments that it made. And the indications I got today from Gary when we spoke to him was that the club is going to, that's where we're headed, then I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dictator. I think that's where he operates his best. So power, control, money. I don't know what order he'd put them in, but that's what he wants. That's where he'll go.
Yep. And let's hope, as I said before, he's working in our favour. That would be a great shame if this doesn't get through, because it's going to be a project that's going to take a little bit of time. And I for selfish reasons, not just that I want to see our team do better, but I'm just really fascinated to see how he does it and what he does and what we do differently, because only then are we going to be really able to understand where we were going wrong. We've all got a pretty good idea of where we were going wrong previous, but to be able to see somebody come in and touch wood, make the right decisions and move the club in the right direction, it'll give us that little bit of perspective on the issues that we suspect were going on, and to see somebody come in that's actually really capable of steering a club from the bottom to the top. So I love the process. I'm looking forward to seeing that. All right, let's leave it there, gentlemen. Midweek pod coming up, and then we've got the Bathurst trip next Saturday for those that have booked a ticket. We look forward to seeing you in Loftus Avenue, just near the Centre of Excellence. A bus will be arriving at 9:45. If you'd still like to join us for that trip to Bathurst, you can do that. Just get in touch via the page that's on the West Tigers podcast website, westtigerspodcast.com.au, and we'll have a fun trip out to Bathurst. Rain, hail, snow or shine, and because that's where we're heading, and win or lose, because it's going to be a tough game, but I think we'll still have a fun time, Gary, and we'll have a special edition of the podcast out of that, because we won't be recording we may be recording next Sunday, but we'll do it a little bit different, because you're going to be talking to some people on the bus on the way home and interviewing them, and I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be different.
Yeah, I guess we can really use the saying, get on the bus now.
Yep. Thanks, Ivan. We're going through Penrith. Maybe we can pick Ivan up and he can be our guest speaker.
Maybe we can run him over.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, boys.
Thank you.